Hello guys, welcome back to the MMASucka channel. My name's Frazer Krohn and this is your Fight Pass Prelims preview for UFC 286 that goes down live this weekend from the O2 Arena in London. The first pay-per-view we've had in the UK for a number of years since Bisping beat Henderson. That was in Manchester. This one returns to the capital, London. Really exciting fight card. On paper, it doesn't maybe look the best, but then you look individually into each fight. There are some really competitive matchups on this card. This episode of the show will just focus purely on the Fight Pass prelims. Tomorrow's we'll be looking at the prelims themselves, and then Friday show will be looking at the main card preview. We've obviously had the MMASucka podcast preview with myself and Tim Wheaton dropped yesterday. So, I'll link it down below, but check out the YouTube channel. And on Monday, we had a review podcast of Jan versus Dvalishvili. We had Bellator 292 and a little bit of PFL sprinkled in there as well. But this one just focuses on the Fight Pass prelims from the first fight. I think there's 6 fights that we're going to preview in this video. I'll be honest, the scheduling of the fights on the card themselves has been all over the place. It's changed about 2 or 3 times over the weekend. So, it's Monday morning now. I'm just going to go through what the UFC website says, what I've seen from Marcel Dorf on Twitter, who's a well-respected Dutch journalist. I'm just going to go by what the UFC website says is the bout order at the moment. But rest assured, we're going to cover every fight. So even if I do get them slightly wrong, if the schedule changes during the week, every fight will be covered. So opening up the card, making her first ring walk since 2020 will be Veronica Macedo taking on the tough winner, Juliana Miller. This is a deceivingly good fight, in my opinion. Macedo is the more experienced woman with 5 UFC bouts under her belt. She only has the one victory, and she's been out since 2020 with sort of concussion-like symptoms after a loss to Bay Malecki. If everyone's seen that fight or even seen the weigh-ins, Veronica is tiny for 125. Sorry, for 135. And this one will be a flyweight bout at 125. Excuse me. It's a really well-rounded fight. Flyweight suits her much better because she's a natural flyweight. She's not a tall girl, Veronica Macedo. I'll just check how tall she is. But when she was fighting up at 135 against Bay Malecki, she was massively outsized. She's 5'4". When she fought Bay Malecki back in 2020, Bay Malecki's 5'9". She was on the end of a 10-inch reach disadvantage, and it showed in that fight. She just couldn't do enough to get the victory. The girls that she's fought, yeah, she's only got one win in 5 UFC fights, but the girls that she's fought are some of the elite. And Ashley Evans-Smith, really experienced. Andrea Lee, top UFC flyweight. Gillian Roberts, top UFC flyweight, dropping down to strawweight. Then she's got the win over Poliana Viana. With that's a win that's aged really well. Viana's after losing to Macedo, went on to beat Emily Whitmire, Mallory Martin, and Jin Young Frey. On the other side, we've got Juliana Miller, who's she's coming off the victory on Tough, but she's vastly inexperienced. She's she only has, I think, 5 professional fights. 4 professional fights. Let me just double check that because I don't want to get it wrong. But Veronica Macedo, for once in her career, is going to hold the experience. Yeah, Miller only has. Yes, she's got a whole host of fights in the Tough House, but she's only got 4 professional fights, of which one was a loss on Invicta back in 2021. She does have a good amateur experience. 6-0 as an amateur, but unfortunately, this isn't the amateur game anymore. She's a very accomplished grappler. She's competed in a lot of grappling, submission underground, Medusa won, a combat jiu-jitsu in Mexico. But how are her nerves going to be? She's kind of fighting on away soil as well. Veronica Macedo obviously fights. She's a traveler. She travels around. She's from Venezuela. I know she trained in factory in the MMA factory in Paris. She now trains with her husband Dan Hardy, who's actually going to be in Veronica Macedo's corner, which is a real factor to sort of look out for. She trains at sort of Hardy Warhead in Nottingham in the Midlands. She's well rounded. She's got good kicks and quick hands, and we've all seen that knockout from her pre-UFC days of the high kick. She's a taekwondo specialist. She's got a black belt in judo as well. She's she's a plus 340 underdog in this one, with Juliana Miller coming in at minus 425. Despite that, I'm picking Veronica Macedo. I really think that she can get it done and really sort of kick on with her career after sort of a bit of a disappointing start to a UFC tenure. Next up, we've got a lightweight bout between Jai Herbert, the hometown boy, Jai Herbert, and Ľudovít Klein. Jai Herbert really needs this one for his confidence. He got the win over Carl Nelson last time out, and it would give him tons of confidence to get 2 in a row. He was beating Ilir Topuria until he got folded. Unfortunately, he really gave Topuria hell in that first round, so arguably a 10-8. But Klein is a very tough test for him to try and get two on the bounce. Klein himself is coming off 2 victories, including one against Mason Jones in London, I believe, last time out. Klein's a slight favourite at minus 155. Jai Herbert coming in at plus 135. But Jai Herbert's good. It's good money to be made on Jai Herbert. He's 6'1" with a 77 reach advantage at lightweight. You don't get that an awful lot. We saw Jalen Turner. He's one of the taller guys at lightweight, and Jai Herbert's up there with one of the taller guys at lightweight. If he can keep Klein on the end of his strikes, punish him coming in like he did against Topuria with knees and elbows. And if he can back Ľudovít Klein up against the fence and really unload on that body, I think Herbert gets it done. Again, I'm picking the underdog for this one. Jai Herbert, I think, will get it done. I think it's probably going to be a decision. He's probably going to eke out a decision. But, it's a close fight. It's a really close fight. Next up, we've got Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina. Perfect fight for Joanne Wood to try and get back in the win column, as Carolina won't look to take her down, which is where Joanne Wood struggled previously. She's been submitted by a whole host of people. Unfortunately, that sounds bad, but her last three losses have come via submission, and it's 3. So 2 of her last 3 have come via submission. Talia Santos rear naked choke and Alexa Grasso rear naked choke. Again, their wins have aged quite well. Talia Santos came very close to defeating the champion Valentina Shevchenko, and then Alexa Grasso went on to defeat the then champion Valentina Shevchenko. But where's Joanne Calderwood's head at in this one? She likes to keep her sort of under wraps. She's moved from Scotland over to Extreme Couture. I believe it's Extreme Couture. But she almost sort of quasi retired. I think she was taken out of the rankings for a while. She's back now. It's the first time she'll be fighting on home, fighting in the UK since 2017. It should be a really fun, action-packed fight that takes place on the feet. Joanne Calderwood averages 6.76 strikes per minute, proving that when she's on the feet, she's active. She likes to put pressure on her opponents. Luana Carolina's coming off the first KO loss of her career, obviously, to Molly McCann in the same arena that she's fighting Joanne Wood. So how will that play on her mental? I think Joanne Wood possibly gets this one done. I'll just check the odds on this one because they don't have them on the UFC website. But I imagine, it's going to be a pretty close. So Joanne Wood is a minus 165, so she's a slight favourite as per Tapology. I think we could maybe see if Joanne Wood wins this or feels flat in there, we could see her hang up the gloves, because I don't know how much she loves the game anymore. But Joanne Calderwood is always going to bring the heat, and it's always going to be exciting. The next fight, Jake Hadley versus Malcolm Gordon. Now, the odds on this one are extremely, extremely surprising to me. Jake Hadley's a minus 380 favourite, with Malcolm Gordon coming in at plus 310. I don't see it being that far. Jake Hadley picked up his first victory last time out after dropping his UFC debut. He got the triangle choke in the second round. He's actually on the feet. He's got reasonable takedown defense, but he's been taken down in both of his UFC fights thus far. He's obviously the former Cage Warriors champion. Malcolm Gordon has faced far tougher opposition, in my opinion, than Jake Hadley. Yes, he lost last time out to Mohamed Mokaev, but so have the 7 or 8 other people that Mokaev's faced. If you look down Malcolm Gordon's record, he's got a win over Francisco Figueiredo. He's got a loss to Samajari, who, one of the better fighters at 125. He's got a loss to Amir Albazi, again, one of the better fighters at 125. And then he's been in there with Mokaev. He's got a sick black belt on the ground, Malcolm Gordon. And if Jake Hadley even, tries to rest for a second on the ground, it could be a, could be a loss in his hometown, in his home country for Jake Hadley. I think Gordon will look to shoot and look to work his ground game. And again, I'm going with the underdog. I don't like to pick against the UK based fighter, but I'm going for Malcolm Gordon in this one. I do think he gets it done. I think he kind of, upsets Jake Hadley in his hometown. I could be massively wrong in that one, which is, the odds would suggest that I am massively wrong. But I do just see that one going towards, just easing slightly towards Michael Gordon. Towards Malcolm Gordon. The next fight is one of the ones I'm most looking forward to on the card. Leroy Duncan versus Duško Todorović. There's a lot of debutants being handed. There's a lot of guys being handed their debut at UFC London. Mostly British guys. We've got Chris Leroy Duncan in this one. We've got Chris Duncan in later on in the card. Sam Patterson obviously later on in the card. We've got Jack Shaw making his featherweight debut. So it's not quite a debut, but he's making his featherweight debut. I think that Leroy Duncan has been given the toughest test of all the debutants at UFC London, although he was the Cage Warriors middleweight champion. So rightfully so, he should be given these tough tests because we want to see how good he actually is. Although he's only 7-0 as a professional, he's got a 17-5 amateur record, so he's used to making the walk to the octagon. This will be without a doubt the biggest walk that he's made, the biggest fight of his life. His UFC debut. But I really think that he can upset Todorović. I say upset. He is the slight favourite in this one. Leroy Duncan at a -210 to Todorović's +170. Todorović is all action. He lands 5.64 strikes per minute, but he also absorbs 4.54. If we look down his UFC record this far, like I say, he's a really exciting fighter to watch, but he gets hit a lot. In his UFC debut, he knocked out Declan Townsend, but then he was knocked out by Puna Soriano, knocked out by went to a decision with Gregory Rodriguez in a fight that was a brutal fight to watch. He then picked up a win, but then he was knocked out by Chidi back in 2020. Back in May of last year, and then he took on Jordan Wright and he finished Jordan Wright, but even in that one he took his licks. Chris Duncan with his style, with his sort of long rangy sort of karate-like style, I think will be really good for him against Todorović. However, Duncan, like Todorović, does get tagged. I think this one's got fight of the night written all over it. And I am picking Duncan, hometown guy, and I really, really hope that he can get it. And I really think that he can make a run at middleweight because he is such a good fighter. 7-0, undefeated, doesn't know how to lose. Todorović has obviously been has picked up a number of losses in his career. He's got a record at the moment of 12-3, so all 3 losses have come in the UFC, and he was slightly exposed in his debut. He was slightly exposed in a number of those fights. I think Duncan can get it done. I think he could maybe even get it done in style with a knockout. I'm gonna pick Duncan in this one. If anyone has seen his last fight on Cage Warriors, a spinning elbow and a punch knockout at the end of the first round, he's got 6 finishes and seven wins, and I really, really think that he is, he's 27 years old. I think he could be the future English star in the UFC, but he needs to kick that sort of winning run off with a win against Duško Todorović, and I think he does do that on Saturday night. And rounding off, headlining the early prelims, Lerone Murphy versus Gabriel Santos. This one's left a slightly sort of sour taste in my mouth because I really, really wanted to see Lerone Murphy versus Nathaniel Wood. Obviously, I spoke to Nathaniel a few weeks ago. I'll link that down below. Nathaniel had to pull out with a freak accident, freak knee injury, which led to him having to be pulled out of the fight. And we've been looking, he pulled out of the fight a good two or 3 weeks ago now, and we've been looking for an opponent for Lerone Murphy since Wood knew that he wouldn't be able to make the walk. And yeah, it was only announced on, I think it was Saturday, that we'd found a replacement. The replacement fighter is Gabriel Santos. I'm not going to lie, I don't know a lot about Gabriel Santos, but just from doing a little bit of research, he's a former LFA champion. He won the vacant belt. He's got seven finish victories in 10 wins. He's 10-0. He's undefeated, and he looks to be, a couple of highlights that I've seen of him, he looks to be an all-action fighter. He's well-rounded. He gets knockouts. He gets submissions. But Lerone Murphy's just looks so solid in his UFC career and in his professional MMA career this far. Last time out, he got that savage knee knockout of Amir Khani after a tough first round of being sort of wrestled. I think Gabriel Santos is well-rounded, but it's just going to be too much to take on late notice against Lerone Murphy. Lerone Murphy fighting in the UK. I just think Lerone is going to. I think he's going to dominate for as long as this one lasts, and I think he finishes him with relative ease. I really do think that Santos can be potentially a player at 145 in the UFC, but to be stepping in on late notice against Lerone Murphy, who has made that UFC walk multiple times, he knows what it's like to sort of lose the first round against Makwan Amirkhani, and sort of come back from that. I think this is the first time that Lerone will be fighting in the UK. Let me just double check that because I don't want to speak wrong on that one. So this is the first time Lerone will be fighting in the UK since making his UFC debut. I think that's going to be huge as well. He hasn't fought in the UK since his last fight before the UFC in 2019. I think in that one he knocked his opponent out in the first round. I'm picking Lerone Murphy by statement knockout, and then he's going to progress up the division. He takes this fight on short notice just to stay on the card. I hope they can rebook the Nathaniel Wood versus the Nathaniel Wood fight versus Lerone Murphy, but it is what it is if they can't. But yeah, that's the early prelims wrapped up. We'll do a separate video released tomorrow about the prelims, previewing all of them. We've got Mohamed Moka versus Jafel Fahilo, Sam Patterson making his UFC debut against Yanal Ashmov, Chris Duncan making his full UFC debut against Omar Morales, and then the featherweight debut of Jack Shaw versus Makwan Amirkhani. And then we'll look further up the card because that main card is seriously good. It's really good. Lots of ranked fighters on it. The two fighters that aren't ranked are all action fighters, Gunnar Nelson and Brian Barberena. Never in a boring fight, Brian Barberena. And then obviously we've got the co-main event and the blockbuster main event that I'm really looking forward to seeing on Saturday night. But yeah, that's the early prelims wrapped up. Tune in again tomorrow for the prelim preview. Thank you very much. Have a good day.